We are finally in season 3 where we get to interview people from our church. And so today we have the one, the only Jubal Tait.
What up?
I can't believe we haven't had you on the podcast yet.
Well, you know, life happens, man.
Yeah, you've been too busy,
Too
or is
busy.
it me? Or
No, it's definitely life being too busy.
yeah,
That's
you got a
what
new
it is.
job and
Yeah.
all the things. So I'm so excited. So we're in season 3, which means mainly we're going to talk about simplicity. But I think we're getting to that point where we can talk about just how any of the practices are working or not working, your experiences or lack of experience, all those things. We want to use this to get people from our church to get to know other people in our church. So that's even that. So we're going to start with that. I want you to share your story a little bit.
Okay.
But then also just like to be encouraged, like we want this to be real.
Right.
And I even know like on Tuesday night in group, you were like pretty honest about where you're at and I don't want to give it away, but you were like, hey, here's this thing, but now I'm doing that. And I was like, that's perfect. Like that's super relatable.
Right.
You know, and like when I look at my story, I was trying to remember, 2018, like my life got rocked, the very end of 2018 with this language of Sabbath and simplicity and all these things. And I started putting it into practice and I went hardcore for like a year. I was like fasting 3 times a week. I mean, it changed my life. I lost like 20 pounds from fasting, even though I wasn't trying to lose weight. Like it was, then COVID hit, but let's not talk about that. But then there was a time where I was like falling out of it and not as disciplined. And I'm remembering that was just such a natural part for my life. And I like how our church is doing this long enough where we can be honest and go, hey, some of you might be, I was all in at first, but now I'm getting a little exhausted. What does this mean? So it's such a great way to recalibrate. And we just want people to know that's normal, right? Like this 100%. Is a part of the Christian life. So it's not about marking off tallies for God. It's about marking out time with God.
I got you, bro.
Come on. All right. So I remember when I met you, you had a really nice truck.
I did.
I guess we should just disclose this. We married sisters.
Yes.
Is that the not weird way to say it? I don't know.
So we married
the Smith sisters.
The Smith sisters.
Okay.
So they're the same family, but we married different ones. I know that's so weird. I don't know why we.
Yeah. So there was a time where neither of us were married to. This keeps getting weird.
Yeah, let's just.
Okay, but here it is. You were dating Jessica. I was dating Jordan.
Yes.
And I remember though praying for you because I shared the gospel to you.
Yeah, we're going to play up in the snow.
Yes. Yeah. Between Brian Regan. Comedy Hour, I'd be like, hey, so what is your belief about this and that and that and this? So it's so fun to think about. I would have never thought where you're at today. You know what I'm saying? Like how cool. Just the way the Lord has saved you and stuff. But yeah, who is Jubal Tait? What's some of your story, your spiritual walk?
Oh man, who is Jubal Tait? Well, so I was raised LDS. I was raised Mormon, right? My family brought us to Queen Creek. My dad took a job doing the welfare farm. That's what brought us here, right? Because he's a farmer by trade. And so he ran my grandpa's farm and he took a job out here, or I guess they call it a calling, right? He took his calling to come out here and run the welfare farm. And so that's what brought us to Queen Creek. And we were running that farm I think I moved out to Queen Creek in like 94, 95, somewhere around.
You're an OG.
I'm an OG, dude. The only thing that was there was Circle K, the liquor store laundromat, gyms, and the carniceria and Rudy's. That was it. And then Lil Pizzazz down the road. If you remember Lil Pizzazz, you have to love this video. I'm dead serious. Lil Pizzazz was the best pizza. I think I
went to school.
You did.
With Kara, right? Her parents.
Her parents, yeah.
That's crazy.
And then they had to move up into Mesa, and then, whatever. But that was seriously the best pizza ever.
And that's right by the junior high, where we meet.
Right by the junior high. Yeah, the bus barn. If you see the bus barns over there, that's where Lil Pizzazz was.
I remember that. I think we moved here in 97, so you beat us.
You're still an OG, though.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There wasn't anything. Yeah, 90s is OG for sure.
Anyways.
So yeah, I grew up on a farm boy. We ran the welfare farm until about 99 or 2000, and the church was like, hey, this guy over here who is a bigger family in their eyes, right, that is losing his farm, so we're gonna give him this farm, the welfare farm, to run. And they told my dad, they're like, hey, you're either gonna go to Missouri, Texas, or Africa.
Wow.
And you can only take your family with you to Missouri. And so he's like, no, you guys told me when I took this that I was only going to be here. And so after that, we stopped going to church for a while. And, when you don't have God in your life takes weird directions, right? Like I was a punk kid. I got arrested. I drank and partied all the time, all through high school and everything. Like even after high school, it's funny. Jessica and I, we'd run into people at like stores and they're like, "Oh, you're Jubal. You're that big stoner." And I was like, "No, I never did any of that." Like I partied, but reflecting back on that, I wasn't a good kid, and it just seeing all that kind of stuff and the way that all went down was just because like I had an absence of parents. My parents didn't care anything about what I did. Pretty much once I was 16, I was on my own. I had my own job. I paid my own bills. They didn't really do anything to support me. And then I just was on my own, did my own thing, and grew up real quick. But didn't have a presence of God anywhere, and it reflected. And then met Jessica like right after I graduated. I met her at a football game and she tried to steal my sweatshirt, even though I didn't know who she was. She was cold.
That's hilarious. We have very similar stories.
Oh my gosh, dude. So like,
it's always at the football field.
So obviously I had friends that went to Queen Creek. We were at the Queen Creek Higley game because you always go to the Queen Creek Higley games.
That's right. Beat Higley.
And she was there and she was cold and I was hot because I run hot, but like, I love wearing sweatshirts. I just think they look cool, So I was like, "Hey, are you cold?" And she's like, "Yeah." And so I gave her my jacket. And she's like, "Oh my gosh, I love you." I didn't know who she was. I was just being nice. And so I met her in October. That was during October. So we didn't start dating. Like we didn't really start talking and dating until like January, right? And then we've been together since like February of 2008.
So I met Jordan the next October.
Yeah.
In 2008. Actually, my dad and her dad met at a football field while I was playing. And then we all went to a game together, like the 5A state, my dad and Mike went together. And so we all went together. And then Jordan was like, "I'm cold. Can I have your jacket?" And so it was awkward though, because, I'm not like that, like especially in front of my dad. And so I gave it to her and then she wanted to keep it. Mm-hmm. Do you know this story?
No, I did not know this.
Oh yeah. And so we were like, "All right, bye." And I was like, the jacket.
I did the same thing. Jessica fully intended on stealing my sweatshirt. And like, I was getting ready to leave and I go and find her. And she told me this like after like a year of us being together. She's like, "Hey, I was going to steal your jacket. I was trying to hide from you because I was going to take your jacket." And I'm like,
it's a Smith thing.
It is, dude. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, she was shocked. It's like, "This is my jacket. I don't know who you are."
Dude. And then that's when she told me, she's like, "Just so you know, all your jackets are my jackets." And I'm like, whatever. I don't care. We're together.
That's awesome. Okay, so and then you started coming to church.
Yeah, right? So then we started dating, and what brought us to church is obviously because you and Jordan, right? You guys getting together and start dating, and you brought Jordan to Christ. Yeah. And so her getting baptized back when it was the Southern Baptist, Santan Heights Church, right? Mm-hmm. She wanted Jessica there, and Jessica's like, "Hey, my sister's getting baptized. Like, I want to be there for her." Like, I'm like, cool. Like, I wasn't opposed to religion. I wasn't opposed to any of that, right?
Which, by the way, is still a lot of people, right? It's like, yeah, I'm not against it. Just whatever.
Right. And so we went, and, it was one of those things, right? Like, when you're not really a full-on believer, like, you probably think, like, yeah, there's a God. God's there, right? But when you're not a full-on believer and you go to church, to a church you've never been to before, right? Like, especially like a Christian church, you get a message and it speaks to you, right? They're like looking around like, "How did you know that?" And so it spoke. I don't even remember. I'll be honest. I have a terrible memory. I don't remember what the message was. But
most don't. Yeah.
But like, it was something that just grabbed me, right? And I told Jessica after we left, I'm like, "Hey, you want to go back next week?" Nice. And so we went back, and we probably started going consistently for about. Because I think she got baptized in like October or November, right? Because we got baptized.
Jordan, yeah.
I think we got baptized in January. So so like 2 months. 2 months later, right? Like going through and like learning and everything, we got baptized, and that's when I came to know Christ, and I got to have that relationship. And I did the same thing I always do. I get fully involved in things and just start going. And it was a weird time for us because we had a whole bunch of friends that still wanted to go out and party and whatnot, but we're like, "Hey, we're on this new path," and we wanted to change our lives. And it was interesting. We navigated through. We had our ups and downs, just like everybody does when you're going through that season of life. Not marriage ups and downs. We have a pretty
I've had those too.
Pretty solid marriage, but nice. But like it was just one of those things that you're going through and navigating as someone in their 20s. And it's tough. It's tough when you're in your 20s and you didn't have that growing up and you didn't have that foundation.
Yeah.
And now you're trying to figure that out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we came to know Christ. She already knew him. She already had a relationship, but like it was like reaffirming for her. And it was something we did together. But it was cool to do that with her and like for us to just grow together, right? Yeah. And be married and have that relationship together and have that be our foundation in our marriage has been really great. Like, I think that's practically what keeps us together, right? Because a lot of people, not a lot of people, but like people, when they go through relationships, they always do that whole like, oh, we're breaking up, blah, 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 you know?
Yeah.
We've never done that.
Right.
Like, I think that's such a huge thing. Like, if you're together,
it's a breach of trust, right?
Yeah. And like you work through it. And we did a lot of that. And, you know, I can't imagine life without her. And like, she's my best friend. Right. And like, I don't know how we got here. I don't, whatever. But like, you know, I think that's such a big thing, like having that person as your best friend.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And I think it shows. Yeah, you guys were a really good example for us as we were kind of figuring out what dating looked like, as we were always a year behind. Although I feel like the family always acted like we were a decade behind you guys. Oh they're like, they're the true OGs. They've been here for a long time. I'm like, I've been around for 10 years. You know?
Well, kidding. And I think a lot of times they forgot that we didn't have my family to go to, right? Because of everything, all the drama that happened with my family. Yeah, and that situation is what really solidified my relationship with Christ. If I'm being honest, because like going through that with my family, like that terrible situation, right? Like, how can I want to put this in
be
words.
As brief, but also
I'm trying to figure out, like, it was just, it was a domestic violence situation and getting out of it. Like at first I was hurt, right? Cause it's your family.
Yeah.
But like, after I was done being hurt, I wasn't talking with God, and then I started talking with God and I realized, you know, their presence was terrible. Like there was no love, right? It was all, what are you going to do for me? What are you going to give me? There was a lot of just hate and anger that surrounded us. And once we got out of it, and once I finally started talking with God again and being like, yo, what do I need to learn from this? Like, I learned that everything happens for a reason, because after that happened, our lives changed so much. Like, I got a new job. We got the house that we're currently in. We had Kinsley. Like, all these blessings happened because we got out of a bad situation. We were so surrounded by so much hate, frustration, anger that it felt like we were trapped. And then we were released from that trap. And, you know, I think God, sometimes bad things have to happen sometimes for you to realize. And it's not because of anything other than he wants you to learn from it and come to know him and come back to him. Yeah. And sometimes he's protecting you in those bad situations, I think. That's how I felt, at least through that scenario.
Yeah, you know, like misery loves company. And so whenever you start to get healthy and change, the people who are closest to you are not. They just want to drag you down.
Oh, dude. Yeah.
And they're jealous of it. They maybe won't say that out loud, but that's the emotion they're experiencing.
Like my sister straight up told me, because we got baptized into the Christian faith. And she straight up told me, she's like, you broke the seal, because we got sealed as a family in the Mormon temple, right? I don't know what that means. And I'm like, so you're telling me, like, and I told her this, I'm like, so you're telling me getting baptized just to get a better relationship with Jesus broke the seal, but our brother who's gay didn't? Like,
man, you're going real in this podcast.
You know, you know what? I'm an honest person. I always share it. You know, I don't have anything to hide.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You can edit it, right? I'm just kidding.
We can if you'd like to.
No. I'm good.
But yeah, let's go back to that. A couple things I was thinking through with your story.
Yeah.
Is everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, 100%.
So the way I like to think about it is, I think there's things that happen that grieves the heart of God, right? Because there's sin done to us, sin done by us, sin done around us. And there is this element. It's the age-old debate, how sovereign is God in every situation.
Right.
And I actually find some comfort knowing that there's been things that have happened in my life that God didn't ordain, that God didn't want to happen.
Right.
But there's evil, but Romans 8:28, he works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. No matter how many times we pivot, we mess it up, or people mess it up for us, God still makes a masterpiece out of it.
100%.
You know, like, yeah, that's fine. That's broken. I preferred you to get that, but that's all right. I got an even better opportunity for you now.
Right.
You know, so it's not like, it's that balance where if something's bad happening, probably it wasn't from the hand of God.
Right.
But God is going to make something out of it.
Yeah. And he definitely did with that situation. Cause like I said, like that whole next year after all that happened with my family, I didn't talk to any of them. It was easier for me to isolate and get away from them because like my sisters, my siblings, they had kids that were around the same age. So I was like, you know what? It's easier for me to just take myself out. I'm the adopted one anyway. So I'm out. Right. And so I feel like sometimes though, that mindset hinders me, if I'm being honest, because like, I think a lot of times, and I think it's cause I'm an Enneagram 6 that I'm just like, hey, you broke my loyalty. Like I'm out. I don't hold that a lot, but I do know in certain situations that like that has affected some things.
So that's the other thing I wanted to broach on. And I think it might begin to segue into practices.
Okay.
You having a couple things against you.
Yeah.
Growing up in LDS.
Yeah.
So it's a little there. It's works based, right? So you kind of have that foundationally just in the back of your brain.
Yeah.
To be human, you think that way too. You know, like I was raised in a Christian home, and I'm always like, oh, I feel like I need to earn something from God. Two, having a home where it wasn't safe, like you had to leave it.
Yeah.
That has to do something to your psyche.
100%.
And then, so how have you? Has there been a struggle not imposing those things on your relationship with God?
Ooh, dang. That's a good question. I don't think so. Like at first, yes. 100%. Like I think it really kept me away from wanting to be honest with God and really having that relationship of being like, look, God, here's my life. What do you want me to do with it? Right. Definitely having that struggle. But I think once
and like being adopted, like, you know, and then you said you were treated differently, right? Like, you know, do you ever feel that? It's like, oh man,
I didn't really feel it until I got older. Talking with my siblings, because like I'll be honest, I don't remember a whole lot of my childhood, and I think it's because it was bad.
Yeah, so your brain is like brilliantly just
blocked it out,
put it away.
And talking with my siblings, like I was treated the worst out of all of them. Like my mom who adopted me, like she was very abusive, and like so I think I blocked a lot of that out. And they told me that I was treated the worst, and so that always kind of stuck with me as I got older, with reference to them. Not to anybody else.
Yeah.
But like to reference to them of like, you treated me differently. Why? You're the one who chose me.
Sure.
Like, I didn't ask you to adopt me. Like, I'm glad you did, because if you didn't, I don't know where I would be. I don't know where I would be. I don't know what I would be doing. Who knows, right?
You may not have ever been able to go to that pizza place.
I may have never been to Lil Pizzazz.
Yeah.
But I don't think I ever held that against God. And I think that's where my loyalty is different, right? Like, I think when you read an Enneagram 6, you're loyalist. And as soon as somebody crosses you, you're like, you're done. That's not how I feel about people. Like, I give people chances and like, I want to work through it. But there are times, I know there have been times where like, you just one too many times, you're done. Like,
yeah, you know, it's boundaries. Jesus even tells his disciples, if they keep rejecting it, you just shake the dust off your feet and go to the next town.
Exactly.
No, of course there's like an evil version of that where it's like, you know, if everybody's toxic, maybe you're the toxic one.
Right.
You know, like if everybody, they just don't get me, and you know, everybody's mean to me
all the time.
It's like, maybe you're the one who's actually doing something wrong, and they're trying to help you, and you just call them evil. You know, I was reading Proverbs 6 this morning, and it's like, blessed is a person who receives discipline and correction. That's the pathway to life.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
It is.
Now, I'm not projecting that on your situation.
No,
I'm just saying, like, whenever I talk about, like, because I think it is healthy to have boundaries. And sometimes, you know what? I just can't have this person in my life. Pray for them. Hope somebody else reaches them, you know, because I think people get confused. Like, oh, I'm a Christian, though. I should always, but you need to protect your family, your loved ones, and all sorts of things. But also there's that other side, like when people ask advice, like I need to cut them off, right? I'm like, I don't know your story enough. Maybe you're the bad person who needs to repent. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. I've felt that, right? Like, And I don't think I am. Like, maybe in certain situations I have been, but like I have thought about that. Like, I'm like, am I the one who causing the problem?
The person who is toxic never asks that question.
Right. That's so true. But I will say there is, and this is all because of I have God. Saturday, we go to Walmart in Queen Creek, right? We're getting birthday presents, go to a birthday party, and we're walking out. My adopted parents are right there in the parking lot. Right, same row where we parked, right? Do I ignore him or do I talk to him? That's what Jessica asked. She's like, hey, do you want to say something or you just want to move on?
Right.
I say something. You know, they're lifting up dog food. I'm like, hey, do you need help? And immediately, no, we don't need help. Then they realize who it is. And they're like, oh, yeah, you can help us. Had a conversation with them. You know, they introduce, she's like, asked the girls' names and whatnot and saying how beautiful the girls are and everything. And, you know, that right there is what God does, right? I shut those people out of my life for a reason, but I'm not beneath them to ignore them. I'm not beneath them to just say, you ruined my life or you were mean to me. Like, you know what? People change. People are different. I'm going to be cautious and I'm not going to interact with you. And like, you're not going to be part of my kid's life because I don't want those things to happen to them that happen to me. But I'm not going to be like mean. I'm not going to ignore if I see you. I'll say hi. I'll give you a hug and say, cool. Well, I hope you guys are doing all right. See you later. You know, and that's just how I go about it. You know, I don't put myself into a situation where there's a potential to hurt my kids. Like, if you want to hurt me, but don't, you know, and that's the one thing, that's my biggest cautious of ever really having a relationship with them.
That's really good. Okay. Going back, you're just giving me a million things I want to talk about.
We could talk all day, bro.
You have till 3 though. So when let's just go down this road. So when we began to introduce things like Sabbath, how did you initially perceive that? Again, with knowing your context, knowing your upbringing,
right?
I imagine LDS, you had some sort of version of Sabbath growing up.
Yeah.
You know, all those sorts of things. How have you been able to calculate, you know, how have you been able to distinguish a Christian Sabbath versus an LDS one and any of the practices? Because, you know, we are not a works-based religion.
Right.
So how have you been able to like balance all that in your brain?
Yeah. So the Sabbath when you're LDS, it's you don't do anything. You don't go anywhere. You stay home. Like you cook food at home. You don't talk to anybody. You don't watch TV. Right. And it's so legalistic. Like you don't want to. Like, that's not a way to Sabbath. Sabbath is about resting. Sabbath's about getting that time with God. And
celebrating and feasting.
Exactly.
And being with people.
Right. And it's just to take that step back almost. Like, that's how I kind of think of Sabbath is like you're taking that step back from your week, your life, and being like, okay, I can just take a break.
Yeah.
I can just not like completely ignore things, right? Like, I still have responsibilities and things like that. But like taking that time to really focus on the things that you need to work on. And when I say work on, I mean yourself, you know, because like, I think that's how my mind goes. I don't do a very good job of Sabbath, if I'm being honest. I'm working on it. I think Jessica and I, we were talking and we really need to like plan it out because we plan everything else in our lives. Why don't we plan this?
Yeah, absolutely. You know. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Exactly.
And that's I think the irony. Rest takes a lot of effort. Sabbath takes a lot of planning.
Right.
You know, it requires you to change your whole schedule. That way, when Sabbath day comes, you don't have the laundry you're worrying about or the this or that, right? And so it really is reevaluating everything. And it helps empower you to actually enter into that moment and be able to just treat it for what it is.
Right. And like for me, I didn't even realize or I'd forgot that Sabbath was one of the 10 commandments. And it's like, obviously this is something that's important.
Yeah.
You know, and like making sure that we actually engage in that.
Yeah.
And not saying that all the practices are important. I think they all are because you see, if you do the practices, you see the results. You see how it changes your mind.
Yeah.
And how it changes your mood. That's what I always notice the most is how my mood changes when I'm actually practicing and spending that time with God as opposed to when I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think there are some practices you don't have to do all the time, right? So like we're going to talk about fasting soon next year sometime. And I think there's seasons of life where it's like hardcore, like, man, there's brokenness in life. There's things that you want more than food. And you're like, God, I'm just, desperation. Or here I'm start preaching on fasting. But like, I think the biggest breakthrough we've seen with some folks, and I want more people to know about it, is if you got real. So I'm going to get real. If somebody has like a lusting issue, actually the first step is to begin to fast, because when you train your body to say no to food, it can empower you to train your body to say no to
that's
other
good.
things. Yeah. So it's like it's a training. It's like, I've already said no to food. I can say no to this other temptation.
Right.
But I think what I want to be helpful for folks as we're at number 3 now, right?
Right.
We're going to start to stack them where it's like, I think we have 10 on the docket. You can't do all 10 all day, every day.
Right.
And so really it begins, this wisdom of, okay, what is in my season in this moment? Now the fear is you can say, I don't need any of them in this season. And it's like, well, you probably do. But the reason we started with those 3, I feel like they're the big 3 that we need today. So G.K. Chesterton, he has this he's a great, like, he was in the 1900s, English guy, brilliant, super witty. I just think he's way too hard to read. Like if I want to have a fun day, I'm not reading his stuff. It's but he says the saints who change society the most are the ones who contradict it the most. Whoa. So anywhere where society zigs, that's where we have to zag.
Right.
And so I think we're exhausted. Everybody's exhausted from hurry and from trying to like prove our worth. Boom, Sabbath has to be number 1.
Yeah.
I think we are deceived. I'm interested. James 1 talks about how we can deceive ourselves, which most people, we all agree everybody can be deceived, but it's hard for us to admit that we can be deceived even as Christians, right?
No way, man. You can totally convince yourself and deceive yourself easily.
I'm a hypochondriac. I deceive myself all the time, as you know. So I'm like, we have to have scripture. And so it's like, to me, it's like, man, I think you should probably read the Bible every day.
Yeah.
Like, no matter what season you're in. Now,
Right.
I think sometimes that means you're just you're holding on to a psalm. You're reading a psalm. It's all you got. It's like, I've been in that season. All I have, Lord, is to show up and read the easiest book in the Bible and to just read it over me.
Yeah.
That's all I have. But other times, like, I wrote all of Romans in 2 days. Like there's different seasons, but I still think it's there. And I feel the pressure, and I love it. I'm going somewhere with this.
Yeah.
I'm willing to budge, but I really think simplicity with where we're at today, we got a mic problem. Okay.
I think I bumped it.
With where we're at today, I really think simplicity is super necessary.
Oh yeah.
Because the digital world is forming us more than we know. And I know for me, man, my material desires, like, they never end.
Yeah.
I never mentioned this in the message, but somebody was talking about when you buy something, it always means you have to buy something more. So like if you buy a jacket, well, now you have to have a nice pants for it.
Right.
And if you have a nice jacket, nice pants, you got to get the good hat.
Right.
And then you got to get the nice shoes.
Yeah.
And now your sock game has to be strong.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's never ending. Or like when you get a vehicle, sure, you see the number but what about all the maintenance? What about all the, so like, it's always more than what you bargain for.
100%.
But then, like, we have people saying, like, man, I don't have enough money. I don't have enough. It's like, yeah, cool. Like, I don't want to judge you, but like, maybe not buying all those things might put you in a happier situation. You know what I'm saying? But I think I feel the pushback to it because it's really exposing us. Like, we're so used to living this certain way, looking for hope, trusting in things other than Christ. And this simplicity practice is like,
well, dude, like,
it's hard.
One thing, as you know, this has always stuck with me, and this ties with simplicity. This ties with the digital
good thing,
world.
God thing. Yep.
No,
okay.
Yeah, you take a good thing, you make it a God thing. That's a really bad thing. And when you're consumed with anything other than God, that's a bad thing. Now, it could be a very good thing. Like,
but if you worship it,
exactly, you make that your idol. Like people with politics, people with material things and wanting the next best thing, or having to look the best every time, or like all those different things.
Impressing people. Yeah, with your relational simplicity.
Yeah. That just makes it a bad thing. That's not what it's about. It's about making sure that you are taking those things out of your sight path, your clear path, and like that's where that deceiving of your mind comes in, because you think you need it. And like we just talked about this on group on Tuesday, and how like your brain gets trained into this routine, and when you're constantly on social media or you're constantly comparing or any of those things, those triggers start to just make a routine, and you're always going to revert back to those because that's what your mind thinks you need to do.
Yeah.
And it's just, that's one thing I noticed. That's why I deleted Instagram, because I would just.
So that's a practical way you've been trying to do simplicity.
Yeah. I was like, you know what? Like, I just caught myself being like, picking up my phone and just going straight to Instagram, just scrolling. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not gaining anything from this. And all this does is say, oh, hey, look, I want to buy this. Or, hey, look, I want to go there or do this. And then, like, those aren't bad things, but, like, that's all my life was consumed with.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, I got rid of it. And now, like, I find myself picking up my phone and trying to go right where it was, and it's not there. I'm like, oh, and I set my phone back down.
Right. It's like an addict, right?
It is. Yeah. And it's just, that's why simplicity is so big. And, like, going back into Sabbath too. Sabbath, if I haven't done it right, I know I haven't done it right, and I want to do it right, and I want to try and do it right, because I think when you do Sabbath and you do these practices, because we've done Sabbath, Scripture, and simplicity, right? Sabbath,
all S's, as you pointed out.
Hey, you know what? We got threes, whatever. But Sabbath for me is probably the hardest one.
That was my next question. What's the hardest one?
I think for me, Sabbath was the hardest. Is the hardest one.
Well, first of all, it's 24-hour commitment.
It is.
You can do all these other practices in 10 minutes. You
right.
know?
And, like, I struggle with, like, okay, if I'm gonna Sabbath, like, what can't do? And, like, I think in my mind, I go straight, like, what are my boundaries? Mm-hmm. Instead of just being like, look, I need to just spend this time with God first and foremost, and then I need to spend this time with my family. And let's go do something. Like, let's make it a family event that we do these things. And we just don't worry about the outside world. We don't worry about these other things.
Yeah.
Right. And I think I try to make it this really big thing, and I shouldn't.
Yeah. The fact that you even said, like, I don't do it right. It's like, well, then, yeah, that your mind's already wrong, right? Like,
exactly.
It's not about passing a test. Sabbath is about placing your trust. Right. And that looks different in different ways. So let me give you a couple tips, for you, but mainly for the people also listening, because I've had some people ask, like, what's your, like, main tips to help? And, you know, it's been a few months, 6 months since we talked about Sabbath. Yeah. I think how you start and how you finish is big.
Yeah.
So, like, for us, what we do is French toast. Now, what's hard is that Saturday setup has, like, ruined that rhythm.
Yeah.
And so it actually made us pivot to where Fridays are Sabbath now.
Right.
But it also, Friday mornings don't work. So we keep pivoting and moving things around. So we're now having it where Friday night is where we're starting, and we're starting with breakfast, because that, like, was the thing we did back then. So it's just Brenner, you know, but it's so fun. And then we read a psalm, have breakfast at dinner, and just ask God to bless the next 24 hours. That's what we do.
Yeah, that's great.
And then 5 o'clock the next night, I actually turn on some music and we just celebrate. All right, Sabbath is over. You know, and usually I actually go into this room and start working on my sermon, like touching it up again a little bit.
Right.
But I always have to, for me, I need to be off digital. So I have to practice simplicity. I need to be off my phone.
Right.
I'm cool with, like, last week, me and Jordan, actually, kids went to bed and we played Mario Kart together and some other game. Nintendo Switch, and it was so fun.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is such a cool Sabbath thing. Like, you know, so, like, there's so much rules you can bend. Like, we're in the new covenant.
Right.
The point was, like, why are we doing this? We're not escaping. We're just enjoying each other.
Yeah.
And so somebody told me the other day, you know, it's a practice that glorifies God when you connect the gift with the giver.
Oh, that's
so
good.
For us, we were saying, this is fun. Thank you, Lord.
Right.
All right, cool. We just did something spiritual.
Right.
So we have fun together. So I always want to do something with my wife.
Yeah.
Something with the kids.
Okay.
And then something alone. And for me, the alone thing is whatever I didn't do enough of this last week. So if I was brain reading, counseling, I am running, basketball, racquetball, I'm doing something outdoors with my body.
Okay. Yeah.
If this week I did concrete all week, I'm probably going to try to either read a good book or listen to some Paul Simon music. Paul Simon's my guy on the Sabbath.
Nice.
But something that's, like, I'm not, like, exhausting my body. I'm going on a walk.
Right.
And just thanking God. So anyways, those are some of the things, you know?
Yeah.
And I actually consider like Saturday setup, I enjoy it so much because we get to hang out like with you and the different parts of our team. I consider it a Sabbath activity.
Yeah.
You know, in the new covenant, it's like, oh no, I'm working, I'm sweating. No, I'm fine. I'm so happy on Saturday mornings. We're with my favorite people who are like going all out for the kingdom.
Right.
And we make it fun. You know, we have music on while we're doing it. And so we're not so legalistic of like, oh, this can't be Sabbath because we're working, you know.
Right. Well, and I wish we had food like Caleb said, but whatever.
In the growth track, for those who need context, we were telling them, hey, serve in this area. And Caleb's like, yeah, if you come on Saturdays, we got food. And we're all like,
we all looked at him like,
who got food?
When did you get food? Was I sleeping?
Yes. Yes. So do you not struggle with the idea of Sabbath?
Not at all.
Like, does Sabbath sound good? Like, have we done a good enough job where it's like, yeah, that's a good thing?
Oh, 100%. Like, and I go through that same thought process that you have where like this week I was in a lot of meetings, did a lot of talking, did a lot of creating PowerPoint presentations or working.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. I actually like that stuff.
Nice.
You know, but like working in Excel and like all of that, like, okay, now I feel like I need to do something with my hands. And so like,
let's go golfing for Sabbath.
Dude, don't tease me with a good time. But like, I try and find things to do, or like, I always make sure Saturdays, if I know we don't kick off Sabbath the right way and I know we don't do it the right way, but Jessica and I always make sure like we're doing something together as a family.
Yeah,
at least
totally.
Something, right? Mm-hmm. And then,
like you guys had a Harry Potter night one night, right?
Yeah. Friday night we had,
awesome.
We just had a Harry Potter night. She made like different Harry Potter like themed foods and whatnot. Like,
although like 2004 Christian Trey would have freaked out that you're doing Harry Potter for Sabbath. But I've grown in the new covenant and full of grace. It's still a bad movie though, but keep moving.
Hey, wait, well, hold on. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah. You know too much, but it's I didn't enjoy it at all.
Yeah. But like, I think if we plan it out, Jessica and I talk about planning it out, and I really want to take those practices you're mentioning, right? Like where you start it off with you kick it off, right? And you're doing something right off the bat.
Yeah.
With like a meal.
Party.
Yeah. And make it a party, right? And so I think if we do that and like really engage the girls on it, it's going to be huge.
And another thing, don't bring up anything that worries you.
Right.
So what we actually had to figure out is sometimes we would have people from church over to Sabbath, and we've had enough people over that they don't need to like, what does that mean or whatever. But sometimes it would stress me out because then we would start talking about like they would bring up church. Yeah. And I know they have the greatest intentions. Like they just want it like, hey, here's how we can make this better, or what about this and that. And it would just like stress me out because I'm like, for you, that's not your job, but it's my job.
Right.
And I'm trying to get away from my job for 24 hours, you know?
Yeah.
But it's good just to like any of those things. Like last Sabbath, I was tempted to talk to Jordan about our bill situation, which isn't a good financial situation we're in because our insurance is the worst. And I was like, oh, no, don't talk about it. There's no point, you know, like we can talk about it on Monday.
Yeah, it's a Monday problem.
That's a Monday problem. Yeah, it really is. Sabbath is great because it's like, it's not responsible to put off issues, but it is on that day.
It is on that day. And I think you're right. The thing I struggle with Sabbath is you're actually like trying to dedicate this whole time and figuring out how you're going to make this 24 hours work. And then like, I think my mind goes that whole legalistic route of like, okay, we're doing Sabbath, so we can't do this, and this. Mm-hmm. And it's like, that's not true.
It's more about what are the things we are doing versus all the things you can't do.
And so I think that's what's going to be helpful for me to change. Cause I do want engage on the practices, right? Cause like I've seen in my own life, I've seen when you actually engage on these things and you really put God at the center and you're having those talks, those relationships with him, that like you see a change. Like I've seen where I'd go a month not praying, not in scripture, nothing, right? To when I go a month where I'm engaged, I pray every day, I'm in my scripture every day, and I'm doing all those things, I'm a much happier person on this side than I am on the other side.
Yeah, because you know how much God loves you. It's the whole point, right? Like,
right.
I'm doing this every day to be reminded, oh, Lord, you love me.
Right.
And even though I feel like my life's not where it should be, you're so content. You know, like you lavish me with your love, your grace, even though I don't deserve it.
Right.
It's just a recalibration.
Yeah, and that's why I think Sabbath's the hardest, because like you really have to be very intentional.
Yeah.
You have to be intentional with Sabbath. Scripture reading, you need to be intentional, but like for me, I listen to the scripture when I drive to work every day. I'm by myself. So like I get that.
Daily habits are easier to finally like put into your routine. This is once every 7 days. It's like, you can't get that rhythm.
Right. Yeah. You don't get a rhythm. And so I think that's what makes it difficult. But I think the reason why it's like that and it's so difficult is because the beauty that can come out of it.
Yeah.
And so that's why, but scripture reading every day, I can just listen to it as I drive to work, and I can pray, I can worship music. Like I have my own little thing that I do every morning because I have like a 40-minute drive to work. I can do that. No problem. I don't even think twice about it. Simplicity. You can delete all your social media because you don't need your social media. You don't need to be engaging in that. You think you do because that's how your mind's been wired, but you don't need it.
And I know some people who literally it's their job.
That's different.
And it's different. And I think it just makes it like, I just want to say it because, again, this conversation is with you, but also everybody who's listening.
Right.
Yeah, that's just going to be harder. Like, it's just going to, you'd have to get more creative. So, like, for me, I'm on, because I have to post this. Like, I'm always posting those things. And so the way I am adamant about it is I, have those do not disturb settings at certain times a day. Right. I put it in the other room. Like, there's ways out of it, but you have to be even more intentional.
If it is your job, though, like, the way you can go about it, if it's your job, in my opinion, because I don't know, it's not my job, but I think what you can do, like you do what you need to do for your job. You don't need to go engage the other things. You don't need to go and like look up other people's profiles.
This is research though.
Right, yeah, exactly. Right. Like you don't
There's a difference between creation and consumption.
Exactly. And so like you don't need to go engage in all those other things, and that's how you can get around it, in my opinion. I don't know because I'm not like a social media, like that's not my job, but like that's how I would think about it.
Yeah, and people have reached out. They're like, so am I not doing simplicity because I'm on my computer? I'm like, it's your job. I know. Like, yeah. Okay, let's not make this legalistic.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to check in on you. You can do whatever. I'm just saying, are you really discontent with your life? For me, it's called holy discontentment. Like, I hit a spot in my life where I was just tired of doing everything the world said to do. And I just kept coming up empty.
Yeah.
Exhausted, fatigued, feeling like I'm not enough. I need to do more. And then realizing, oh, that's actually a gift from God because it's hey, there's a better way to live.
Yeah, 100%.
And then you look at the word and like, oh my gosh, he gave the pathway to it.
Right.
Okay, and God has grace for me, so I don't have to learn all this overnight, but it's training. And so training day 1, get out of the couch and walk for a mile. What does that look like for me? Okay, that means I'm going to read my Bible every day this month, and then we're going to stack onto that,
Right.
So that's like, it renovated my heart. It was such a cool, just like, oh, there's something more to this life. And then like that's changed us so much. And we brought Caleb into the journey and he's like, man, this is amazing. That's why we wanted to bring it on everybody.
Right.
But man, that legalistic, what it is, it's 1 Peter 5. The devil is prowling around like a roaring lion, seeking someone to devour.
Oh yeah.
And these practices are another way he can take it and twist it in order to devour some more people. So I think for us as leadership, I have to pray against that constantly, but also remind people constantly, man, this is an invitation to love. You don't have to do any of this. You can live your life. Morality is a requirement.
Right.
You shouldn't be killing people. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to call the cops.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
But maturity is a request.
Yeah.
To me, this is the James 1, someone who is growing in endurance, growing in maturity, enduring through the trials, Sabbathing on the days where it felt great, Sabbathing on the days when it doesn't feel great.
Right.
Really learning to do these things. This is what I want the deep end of our pool at Passion Creek to be deep.
Yeah.
And I don't want some people playing around there.
Yeah.
Now, we love those in the shallow end of the pool, and we want the shallow end of the pool to have the cool umbrellas and have a great time because, I was in the shallow end for a long time and I needed to be there.
Right.
But now it's like, oh, is there something else to this? Oh, cool. The deep end. I get to dive,
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do with this. Man, you can be in the shallow end if you'd like, but we also want to create a better environment where we need to be more like this world is hard and it's hostile, and maturity is the way through.
Yeah, it is, man. And it's like with the social media, like, and being consumed with that, like who's to say that isn't the devil targeting you, right?
Absolutely.
That's where lusts come from. That's where desires come from that aren't of your own thinking, but you've seen it enough times to where you're like, maybe I do need that. Maybe I do want to go down that path. Maybe I do want to do these things. When in reality, you don't, but you've seen it so many times that now it's ingrained in your mind, and now you have that routine. And that's why I was like, dude, I got to get rid of Instagram. Like, that's the only, and the reason why I pick Instagram specifically, because that's the only app I ever felt that with.
Interesting.
Right? That like I can go
and
on,
that's a good example of freedom. There's other things I don't feel that with, so I don't have to go all out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only thing that consumes me on Facebook is Facebook Marketplace looking at golf clubs and cars. Like, but I don't ever buy anything. It's just something I like to look at. But but I would notice on Instagram how that would change my mood, how that affected my mind. And so that's why I was like, look, I got to get rid of this. Like that was the one thing I knew for simplicity specifically. I had to be like, you got to go.
To me, that was the biggest one. Like just this digital world that's happening to us. Certain generations, it's more of like the TV, the news.
Yeah.
Others of us, it's the social media.
Yeah.
Proverbs 6:27 through 29. Through 28. Let's read that. It says, "Can a man take fire in his bosom?" Let's see what translation I'm using.
Thou shalt.
Let's do the. That's in NIV is, "Can a man scoop fire into his lap without his clothes being burned?"
No.
Can a man, let's see another translation. Yes, the answer is no. Can a man embrace fire and his clothes not be burned? And the devil's greatest trick is that you convince you he's not there, right?
Right.
And so what we have a lot is people exhausted and saying, "Why are my clothes burned?" And we're like, you keep putting the fire on your lap.
Yeah, that's good, man. Yeah, you're 100% right. That's such a great point because it is. That's exactly what you're doing whenever you're giving into those desires and those things that you think you need, because that's what you've been told.
Yeah.
Right. And not necessarily someone physically telling you, but like that's what the enemy is attacking you with, because he knows your desires. He knows the things that you need.
Totally.
The things
your triggers.
Your triggers. Right. He wants you to go away from those instead of going towards Jesus. Right.
Yeah.
And so
that's why the Proverbs also says, don't even go down the street of that lady's house.
Yeah.
Like if you churn into that road, it just got a whole lot harder to say no.
Yeah.
So that's why we're like, hey, maybe you want to delete this. Maybe, again, it's an invitation. I'm trying to make that so obvious.
Right.
You don't have to do any of this. If you are mature enough, shout out to those who can do you need to take that call?
I don't know. Oh, they stopped calling.
Okay. Shout out to those who can have all these apps and have all that at their fingertips and it doesn't affect them or they don't get addicted to it.
Yeah.
That's just not me. I'm an info junkie. And so I'm like watching stuff because I just want to learn more.
Right.
What's another, like, you ever do strengths finders?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it's like your top 10 strengths or really your top 5. So my top strength is input. And it literally said the best job for an input person is a librarian. Because it's all about, well, I read about this. Let me tell you this cool thing. Oh, am I not like that, right? Like, hey, this quote, hey, this resource, hey. So I always want to take all this weird random stuff and insert it into conversations.
And that's why you have a library.
And that's why I got my library behind me. But that's also why I'm like on YouTube and podcasts.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I'm weary. Like I'm just exhausted.
Yeah.
And it just took a long time because I'm like, but fire's good.
Yeah.
In a fireplace and I'm cold. But okay, you're putting it on your lap now.
Yeah.
The fire's no longer doing what you need to do.
Yeah.
And that's going to burn.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
for sure.
May the Lord give us wisdom to see what fire are we putting on our lap.
Right.
And then give us, Holy Spirit, the strength to say, we're not going to do that anymore.
Right.
And I'm not going to go down that road because, man, I want to live a life in abundance. Not because I'm trying to earn it. I want to, what do we say one day? We're doing these practices not to earn God's love, but to turn to God's love that's already there for us.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what I notice when I actually engage in the practices, right? Like I mentioned earlier, like if I'm angry, I'm frustrated over everything, right? It changes my mood completely when I'm not having that communication with God and then not talking with him. And it's just a simple prayer. Like I could go a whole week not into my scripture, but if I go a whole week without praying, I notice it. Mm-hmm. I recognize it. And like, even Jessica, she's like, what's wrong? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just frustrated. I'm just mad, whatever. Right. And it's because I know I'm not engaging in the practices like I should. I'm not engaging in the relationship that I need to have that brings my life into an abundance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just my fight. I played sports my whole life, and so everything's a competition, and I have to do the best.
Right.
And so then it becomes a game and not a loving relationship. It becomes a tally and not time, and so I have to constantly go, okay, I missed the plot line again. Sometimes I give myself the grace of like, you know what, this week I'm barely doing any of the practices. And then I go, oh, wait, yeah, I did need to do them. It's like a wake up call. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have the grace to not do this. And then I do it for a week and go, yeah, that's a cool grace, but I actually want to do it again because life is better. I'm living the life that God designed me to live when I'm pressing in.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I've accepted that, like, there's grace there with the practices, but I feel like sometimes I've accepted it too much, like.
Let's talk about that.
Okay.
So I'm reading Dietrich Bonhoeffer. He's a really cool guy where he's a Christian and he actually protested the Nazis. So he was in Germany.
Okay.
And I'm actually sharing it on a sermon on this Sunday, which I think I'm going to post this after so people will know a little more context. But his whole thing, the book is called The Cost of Discipleship.
Okay. And
he talks about cheap grace versus costly grace. Now, when people say, no, you need to remind me of grace that allows me to not have to do any of this, he says that's cheap grace and it's not biblical grace. Grace, true costly grace, is grace that calls you to sacrifice your life, but it gives you the power to do it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's good.
So cheap grace is Romans 7, antinomianism, where Paul says, you've got it all wrong. Oh, I'm going to keep sinning so that grace can keep coming my way.
Right.
So all these people in Romans 7 got so confused. Yeah, I love grace. Sign me up. I'm going to go sin even more because then I need more grace to forgive me. He's like, no, you missed the plot line.
Yeah.
The person who needs the most grace is the one living in holiness because they're saying every day, God, if you don't, like, I'm going to practice simplicity today and I can't do it in my own power. Right. I need your grace to give me the power to do this. Grace is like jet fuel, right? It's what empowers us to live righteously.
It does.
But false grace says it's permission. Do whatever you want. Live like the world. That's not biblical grace.
Right. That's such a
costly
good word.
Grace. It's not permission. It's power.
Right. That's such a good word because, like, I think that's where we're at today.
Yeah.
That's where we live because we say that all the time. Like, there's grace, but really, if you have the right perception of grace, then your grace is you're being filled with abundance because you are engaging in the practices. And I think so often we're like, oh, well, there's grace, right?
Yeah.
And really, there isn't, because if you're not in that communication, you're not in that relationship with him, he's not really giving you the grace that you need because he's not listening to you. You're not inviting him in to be there with you.
So I would edit that a little to say,
go ahead.
There is grace for you, but you're not grabbing it.
Okay.
Because God is gracious to us.
Right.
We can take 1,000 steps away from the Father. It always just takes one to come back.
Right.
Because he's pursuing us. I know you didn't mean it that way,
right,
but it's my job to go, how can somebody take that the wrong way? You know what I'm saying?
That's true.
But yeah, so like God is full of grace and he wants to give it to us. I often give this other illustration. Maybe I need to mention it again on a Sunday. But let's say my uncle, he owns the Superstition Mountains. Okay? You with me on this illustration?
Yeah.
And in his will, he willed me the mountain.
Okay.
And he gave me a map and said, actually, there is real gold here.
Let's touch man.
Okay. Listen. So then I go, okay. So now I have the map. I have it as an inheritance. I own it, even though I know this is government property, but let's move on. It's my illustration. And so do I have gold in my possession?
No.
Technically, yes, but no, right?
No, you don't.
Is that gold mine, though?
You have the gold mine. You have the gold mine.
Yeah, so that gold is mine.
Yes, that's in the mountain, but you got to find it.
And I got to work for it.
Yeah.
I got to dig it.
Yeah.
So it's mine. It's my inheritance.
Right.
But every day I got to get a tractor, I got to get a pick, whatever I need to go grab it to use it.
That's a good illustration.
And I think with the Gospels, like we have, Ephesians says, this inheritance of Christ. It's ours. But like, you want to experience it, you got to get your shovel out.
Yeah.
You got to practice.
Right.
So to me, every day, like when I practice Sabbath, rest is mine in the Lord.
Right.
And today I'm grabbing it.
Right. And I think that's the illustration you need, right? You gotta, because when you say you're gonna go dig for that mine, it's almost like you're going for works, which that's not what we're going for.
It's already my mountain.
Yeah. And so like you said, you gotta grab it, right?
Yes.
That rest is mine. So it's almost like that's mine for the taking, and I'm gonna take it.
Yes.
Because you have to have that mindset.
It's only my fault. It's like God's like, I gave you this inheritance.
Yeah.
You can grab it any day you want.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just refuse to try to make a living somewhere else. You don't need to make a living over there.
Right.
The gold is here.
Yeah.
Just come in.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's the one thing that has resonated with me recently too, is like knowing that you have to invite him into that. Like he's going to guide you to it, but you can't guide yourself to it. You need him to guide you to it.
True.
And he's not gonna guide you to it unless you ask him.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so man, it's ours. And so and that's the other thing. It's like, where do I want to take this one? Let's use one more illustration and we're done. Dude, we're doing great. Are you feeling fine?
I'm good. I could keep going, man.
Okay.
I'm good.
We're going Joe Rogan on this.
Let's go Joe Rogan. No,
we're only an hour in.
Yeah, we're good, man.
Chick-fil-A. You know how they give that, like, at CBU, if you nailed the half-court shot, you get free Chick-fil-A for a year.
Yes.
Okay. Now, the way they do that, though, when you get free Chick-fil-A for a year, they don't have a semi-truck that backs into your driveway and they give you 52 sandwiches with 52 fries and 104 Chick-fil-A packets.
Right.
What they do is they give you a card. Okay.
Yeah.
And what they do, though, is you have to go every day and get what's already yours.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have to do the same thing with God.
So grace is not opposed to effort, it is opposed to earning.
Yeah.
This card is mine. I already have a whole year's worth of food.
Right.
But I got to get my butt out of the bed and I got into the truck and go get what's already mine.
Right.
But another thing is we think grace is he just dumps it all in one moment. That food would spoil, right? So like it's one day at a time. So I need grace for today. And so that's why I'm pursuing the scripture again today. I can't go to church on one day.
Right.
And the next 6 days I don't have to eat because I ate a big meal on Sunday. That's not it.
No.
There's grace for each day.
Yeah.
And so I got the card and I'm just going in.
Swiping it.
And I'm swiping it.
Yeah. Dude, that's good. Yeah. Because that right there is such a great illustration. Because you're right. You're not going to get it all at once. Mm-hmm. You don't need it all at once. Because you won't know
what to do with it.
Exactly. And so getting it daily, being fed daily, there's a reason why the Bible says, give us our daily bread.
Come on.
Like that's
prayer.
Yeah. That's why we have to do those things. You have to pursue them because then that's when you get filled with your grace.
And so we can get exhausted thinking of like, oh, I did Sabbath so great last week. Why do I have to do it again this week?
Right.
But it's like, okay, but that was a grace for that day. And you got to keep going again.
Yeah.
But what a privilege. When you go, you're like, you know what? Why am I complaining?
Yeah.
I get free Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I just got to show the card.
Yeah.
I got to show my identity and I already have it, but I got to go get it.
Yeah. 100%. And it's having the mindset of what an opportunity.
Yes.
I love that phrase. It's so funny because of the background of it.
Yeah.
But like, it's such a good saying. Like it is what an opportunity for me to glorify God in this moment. What an opportunity for me to go and love him in this moment. What an opportunity for me to be sad in this moment, but to know that I can rejoice with the Lord.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that the burden of preaching is, I think there's two ways to inspire people. One is to say, what an opportunity, right? Mm-hmm. Like, look at the vision. Like, look who you could become. What kind of person do you want to be in 30 years? Cool. Let's say, this, that. Great. How are you going to get there? Well, these practices are going to help you, right?
100%.
So sometimes like what I have to do is paint a vision. Like, man, this is just better. Like, let's go do that. Other times the way to communicate to people to change is to show how worse they are now.
Right.
So it's like, hey, your life is worse than you think. Sometimes that's the job.
Yeah.
Like when we were talking about digital consumption for 10 minutes, I kept saying like, man, this is killing you. This is killing me. This is killing us.
Yeah.
And this way.
Yeah.
And what we're trying to do is like create a holy discontentment where it's like, you're right. I don't like where my life's at. Give me a way out.
Right.
You and I, we have a mutual friend. I'm going to mention it that way because I didn't get their permission, but they received a diagnosis that said, if you don't change your life, mm-hmm. this new thing is about to enter into your health that will forever define how you operate and live and relate to food and life.
Yeah.
So this person went, whoa, I'm going hardcore. I'm changing all of my habits and lifestyle with food and this and that and exercise. And then this person got good news that, hey, that's no longer knocking on your door.
Yeah.
What did it take for that person? It took bad news.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when I look at all these practices and stuff, we have to think through, man, what happens when we don't do this? It can get pretty bad. Like we're living a shell of what we could be doing.
Right.
Living.
And I think for me, sometimes personally, I'll wait I don't intentionally wait, but I wait for that bad news.
Yeah, it's human.
Yeah, I wait for that bad news to be like, oh wait, I got to change this in my life. And then like you change and you start to see the benefits and you start to engage in those different things that are going to make you better, right? But how do we get around from not waiting for the bad news? You know, like that's the hard part in trying to figure this part out.
I think it's James 1, Holy Spirit, give me wisdom. Yeah. You know, so that I don't have to wait for the other shoe to drop. Yeah. I think somebody defined wisdom that way, where you don't have to hear bad news to change. It's, you know, it's obviously better worded, but yeah, that's the wisdom. There's a pastor, he says, don't pay the dumb tax. Mm-hmm. And he said, he's like, for me, he goes, I'm giving you all these lessons because I had to do it because I was too dumb. I didn't know the answer. Right. But now I know the answer. So he's like, if you make the same problem, that's you paying the dumb tax. I already paid that for you. Skip the dumb tax. Right. And just do what I say. Yeah. You know, and so I think that shows the importance of multi-generational church, having mentors around the church, hearing, hey, when you're in this stage of life and this, you know, when you were newly married, this, that, the other, when your kids are about to enter junior high, what worked for you? What didn't work for you? You know, let's learn from each other rather than, oh my gosh, my teenager is now dealing with this problem. Now I have to fix it. Right. Being proactive is so much better than being reactive.
I tell people all the time, like even non-believers, I'm like, look, I'm going to love you no matter what. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I'm called to do. Right. I want to love you. I don't care about your past. Your past is your past and you can turn away from it. Every day is a new day. Yeah. And so often I tell people that, especially non-believers, because I want them to see that side of the church. I think a lot of times people don't see that side of the church. Sure. They see the side of judgment. They see the side of we just want your money, when that's not what it's about. I want you to have a relationship with Jesus. And the only way you're going to get there is if I show love to you. Right. And if I show that compassion to you, and that brings those people with those different backgrounds in, and having those different people within the church, you know, totally. Like you having the multi-generational of people in their different seasons. And it's great having that in your group too, because you can relate in different aspects of life. You may not relate in this current season, but somebody's been there. Mm-hmm. Someone can help you through that and talk with you through that, and you can grow together, you know, and it's just sharing your story and talking your story and having those relationships with those people.
Yeah. Being so patient and understanding, because there's not only multi-generational, but like we're in different, you know, some of us started earlier in the Christian life than others. Yeah. Like you can be the same age and be like totally different life. Right. You know, and so having patience, that's why I like how we want to use that training metaphor often with these practices. It's like, hey, you know, if you've never run a marathon in your life, we're not asking you to run 13 miles tomorrow. Tomorrow, the big win is you didn't eat Cheetos. Right. You know, and then we're going to move from there. Right. And so we celebrate that. Man, success looks different for everybody. It's like for me, okay, let's say, man, I've been running 6 miles for 6 months. I have to up it up to 7 now. Yeah. You know? And so then we celebrate, hey, you did 7, but that guy got 19. Okay, that's cool. It's not about where you're at on the yard line. Are you moving forward? Right. You know, 1 yard at a time.
Yeah. And like, I think there are times for me personally that I just struggle with, like, I should be further along in my walk. And I think a lot of people feel that, especially if you've been in the church a while, you know, like we got baptized in 2008 and here we are 15 years later. Right. And I almost feel like if I talk to people and tell them that, they're like, oh, you should be a lot further along. You know, you're viewed as a leader in the church and you should be a lot further along. But I mean, like you said, we're running this race, we're running this marathon, and it's practice for when we have to run that final marathon. And keeping that mindset and being able to train yourself. And that's what these practices do. Yeah. You're training for that marathon. Yeah. And you're going to have days you're going to wake up and you're like, you know what? I don't feel it today. I can't run today, whatever. Right.
Totally.
And that's what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And you have to recognize those things and you really have to like talk yourself through those things.
I think my spiritual director tells me this all the time. He says spiritual growth often feels like backsliding. Yeah. Feels like backsliding. It does. It's not, but it feels like it. Right. Because you're struggling, you're wrestling. Yeah. You know, and you're just tired sometimes.
When you're changing so many aspects of your life too, right? Like, especially as a new believer, you had such a different background of your life. Yeah. And now you're changing so much of your life where you feel like you're a completely different person, which you are, but you're a different person for the good. But like, you feel like you're backsliding because you're just a different person now.
Yeah. I'm sharing this again on Sunday. So this is almost affirming that I think where we're going to go on Sunday is good. So some people hopefully have already heard this.
Nice.
But there's a prayer from this guy, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin.
Ooh.
Okay.
Oui.
But it's this Ignatian prayer, I think. But it's super helpful. So check this out. I've actually been holding on to this prayer all week. Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient in everything to reach the end without delay. Everything we're talking about right now, right?
Yeah, 100%.
We should like to skip the intermediate stages. Yeah, we want to skip that, right?
Yeah.
We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown, something new, and yet it is the law of all progress that it is made by passing through some stages of instability. So to make progress, you have to go through instability.
Yeah.
You have to be going like you're going backwards.
Right.
And that it may take a very long time. And so I think it is with you. Your ideas mature gradually, or maybe we can say our practices mature gradually. Let them grow. Let them shape themselves without undue haste. Don't try to force them on as though you can be today what time will make of you tomorrow.
Yeah.
So a lot of this, it's the practice plus time.
Yeah.
That equals that transformation. I'm almost done. I'm sorry. It's a long prayer.
You're good.
The few are just so helpful lines. Only God could say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be. How cool is that? Like, who knows what God's going to be doing?
Right.
Right?
Yeah,
Only God knows
so
what
good.
we're on the path to. So don't judge yourself too soon.
Right.
Don't be like, oh man, I'm not. No, God knows. Only He knows. But I love this line. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that His hand is leading you, and accept the anxiety of feeling yourself in suspense and incomplete.
Yeah, that's good, man. It's exactly everything we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
100%. And it's refreshing. Like that's a great prayer.
Yeah, I've just been
Glad I got to hear it first.
Last night, yeah. Last night, it's all I could hold on to. Like, I was just in a really down spot, and I thought, oh, okay, instability is the way to growth. It's the way to progress. You know, like, I can't judge where I'm at or where we're at too soon. Like, God is working, and evil work is always fast.
Oh, yeah.
But holy work is super slow because
Right.
it gets down to the root, down to the marrow.
Yeah.
You know, because like, you know, if something happens fast, it can leave fast,
Right.
you know, but with the Holy Spirit, His work, it's so slow and gradual, but true and genuine.
Yeah, it's so true. Cause like and like going back to simplicity in social media, right? That's exactly how it is. You fall into those desires and everything just like that because of what shows up on your feed or whatever, right? And it's so quick.
And you spend one day away from digital media and you're like, I'm still anxious. I'm not a perfect person. I'm not. And it's like, oh yeah, okay. Don't judge yourself. It takes a while.
Yeah.
Like detox takes some time, right? If you're certain at an addict level, it's not a one-day clinic.
No.
Hey, you're here for a month. Hey, you're here for a year. You're here, you know, like I think we're addicted to things more than we know. And it's going to take a lot of grace and a lot of patience to 100%. Get through it.
And it's even things that you don't think are bad or able to be addicted to, but that you are just because of the routines that you've created.
Yeah.
And that's what kills it because you feel like, oh yeah, I'm not doing a bad thing.
Yeah.
You know, and it goes right back to when you take a good thing, you make it a God thing, it's a very bad thing. Mm-hmm. Like, and those are the things that always go through my mind when I'm going through some of these things and I'm working through them. It's like, you know what? That wasn't good.
Yeah.
Even though it was a good thing. And it's like having the intentions, right? Like, it's like when it talks about tithing and it says, you know, don't let your right hand or your left hand see what your other one's doing, right?
Yeah.
It's that same thing. And it's like you want to, oh man, I lost my train of thought.
Sorry, I'm distracting you. I'm fixing a camera.
I had it and I lost it and it went away. It'll come back.
My battery is dying on my computer. But it's charging that and I'm trying to do both at the same time. Do you think of it yet?
No, I lost it. It's gone.
Oh man. Well, see you guys. No, I'm just kidding.
That ends our podcast. We'll talk to you later.
Yeah, it's just really, really slow. And oh yeah, that's what I was gonna say. I'm actually I think I'm grateful that it is slow, because when you achieve something, you're like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, exactly.
And then you're bored.
Right.
So like people who've like made all the money in the world, like, now what?
Yeah, you find ways to make more money.
But character transformation is a lifelong journey and project, and it's really a joy to go, man, there's so much more to go. That actually is inspiring, because now I still have a goal. But also, wow, praise God, look back to who I was 5 years ago. Look back a decade ago. Man, I am growing. Even in our group, the other night, somebody had said, I'm in a spot where this stuff is hard, but man, I can't deny, when I look back at who I was in January versus who now, a lot of changes happen.
Oh yeah, dude. I look back to where I was 2 years ago, and so much changes happened. And like, I think there were a couple of things that changed even in the last 3 years, and I'm going to, between me and you, right?
Sure.
That helped me grow and change. And it took something off of my heart that was probably sitting there unintentionally. Right. And it's something that,
I just messed up. Hold on.
Oh no.
I took away the wrong thing.
The wrong one.
Okay, hold on. It should come back.
All right.
I'm messing up this podcast.
It's okay.
There we go. You're back.
All right, I'm back.
Every time you have something profound, I like to interrupt it. So.
Of course. That's how we do it here. And this is why we're just going to keep talking and have a good time, and people can get out of it what they need.
The computer is flashing red, so if I didn't switch this charger over, the whole thing was going to die.
Yeah.
So. Our relationship.
Yeah, so like that, like mending that with you, I think I carried a lot there that I never spoke of. And I think mending that and fixing that was helped me change so much, because then like it brought us back into getting, I'll be honest, like we tried other churches, and other churches don't want to help people develop, or at least I don't feel, I can't speak for everybody, but in my own personal opinion, other churches.
Thank you for that precursor.
Yeah. I feel other churches don't do a good job investing into people to help them invest in themselves, to better themselves, to be in a better relationship with Christ. And I feel that's something that Passion Creek does. And
we didn't do a good job of it the first time you were around, though. And that was part of that 2018 life transformation in my own heart that made me go, oh man, there's more to this.
Yeah. Well, and I think even just both of us, like realizing our leadership and what we needed to do to fix that. Right. And I think communication was the biggest thing. That's something that we lacked the first time around, when we first planted the church. We didn't communicate very well at all, if I'm being honest.
Anytime there's confrontation, I was like, oh, and I just kind of avoid it.
Right. And so, but we've grown from that, and now we talk all the time. We communicate.
Now we fight all the time.
We fight all the time, but at least we're talking about it.
No, but we're willing to. We're willing to disagree. We're willing to go, hey, where are you at? Is everything good?
Right.
We can talk about it. We're big boys. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think fixing that like changed me in other aspects of my life. I almost think that held me back from my own like even professional development.
Sure.
Right? Because when I changed that, like that's when I really started to enjoy leadership, and that's when I really started to be good at it. And I just got so involved in it. It made me realize, when you hold on to those things and you are struggling with those things with anybody or anything, like if you got to give those things up, you got to talk about them, and you got to work through them, because what is that holding you back from?
Dwelling on rejection is a damaging infection.
Oh yeah, it is. Dropping bars.
Yeah, no, I mean, man, that's James 1, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. Anger there is orgizo. Or orgazzo, I think, where it's the slow simmer, like just, man, that person bothered me. I'm going to ghost him because that really bothered me. He's like, hey, be slow to that. Quick to listen means go to the table and have the conversation and figure it out.
Right. And then even going into verse 2, the endurance. We are in the endurance of this, and what does that build from that endurance, right? Like even just James 1-3, just that whole part, right? And really
1 through 3.
1 through 3.
Yeah.
Just engaging in through that and learning that part and getting through that endurance. Like you're building something better. And I think that's what the endurance is for.
That's where we're entering into in our church is honeymoon's over as far as like, hey, practices, that's kind of cool. Let me experiment. Now, okay, will you endure? Like, are you going to actually let this mature you? Like it's typical. And we had considered doing this. Let's do a sermon series for 4 weeks where we talk about the 4 most important practices. Hope that you do it. All right, let's just go back to everyday life. But we're annoying and we're going, okay, 4 weeks on each practice. And then the next 8 weeks, it's all we're talking about. And then maybe we'll enter into the next one, which I'm not sure what we're going to do. We might take a pause in November just to make sure, okay, let's not overwhelm. Okay, where are we at with Sabbath, Scripture, simplicity?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Because the next one's generosity and then fasting. And I'm excited for those things, but we're just not wanting to bulldoze through, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's endurance.
Yeah.
It's a grind, you know, but there's so much life on the other. It's just like training. It's
100% training. And like, I love the way that the practices are being engaged, right. And being presented, because I know for me, I need to understand those things. And I think having like, if you don't have that big background and then you can say, hey, look, like this is what Jesus did. This is how Jesus and the disciples went through things and they process things by doing these practices. Like, to me, that's like, okay, cool. If I do that, that's just going to better my relationship with Christ. And like seeing the practices that are coming up, I'm excited because like in my mind, at least, I'm already trying to engage in those.
Sure. Yeah.
You
like
know?
I know you're doing generosity. You're not like waiting like, well, I'll wait to be generous.
Yeah. Like, I'm excited for generosity. I do try and fast. I haven't been good about it the past few months.
I'm so excited to teach on that. I mean, that's been life-changing for me. And fasting was never the thing I thought it was.
Right.
But, yeah, what else were you going to say? Sorry.
No,
I cut you off.
Oh, you're good.
Okay. Oh, man. We're getting to the part of the episode where I'm like, I have a great idea. No. Oh, yeah, Eugene Peterson. Eugene Peterson has this line in, I don't know, I have all of his books. I'm obsessed with Eugene Peterson, as you know. But he says, the Jesus way, wedded to the Jesus truth, brings about the Jesus life. Mm. And what we're trying to do in the practices is this is the way of Jesus. Sabbath rest, this is what he did. Mm-hmm. You know, memorizing, meditating on Scripture, this is what he did. Simplicity, like he didn't own a lot of things. Like this is what he did.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the way of Jesus, the hodos in Greek. It's actual set of not just beliefs but behaviors. Mm-hmm. But we are what you would call this book right here that I'm actually holding up. It's called Remaking the World. Mm-hmm. How everything changed in 1776.
Yeah.
But do I want to go all the way in that book? Yeah. So essentially, one reason why I think we haven't seen like major life transformation in the American church is we just think the Jesus truth brings about the Jesus life. Mm. But you have to wed it to the way.
Right.
So the reason we think just truth, which again, truth is a wonderful start. That will eventually lead, if you do it right, it'll lead you to do it. James 1:22, be doers of the word, not hearers, only deceiving yourselves. But this is why we're focusing on the practices, because that's we don't naturally want to do any of the things we're learning. But Jesus' way, wedded to the Jesus truth, brings about the Jesus life, which is life in abundance, peace that passes understanding, all those things. But the reason why it's hard for us is naturally we are Cartesian, which is Rene Descartes. He has this whole theory, I think, therefore I am. And so he says all that matters is you have the right knowledge. If you get the right set of information, your life is great. But I lived the Christian life long enough to go, okay, I knew the gospel. I knew all the right stuff, but I was living habitually. I was habituated into a secular system.
Yeah.
I was watching things I probably shouldn't watch. I was talking, like all the things.
Yeah.
So even though I knew the truth, I was living another thing. And I didn't have the Jesus life. And I'm not talking about salvation. I think I was always, I was saved when I believed in it the first time, but I wasn't living in the fullness of the telos, the maturity, the wholeness, as James 1 says, until I realized the Jesus way, wedded to the Jesus truth, brings about the Jesus life.
Right. Well, it's just like I was talking about. I'm a completely different person. I know Jesus's way. Like, I know I'm saved. I know the gospel. I know all that, right? But if I'm not engaging on anything, I'm a completely different person.
Yeah.
And that is telling to me, because if you don't engage on those things, you're not happy. You're frustrated. You're anything that is anything that can be attacked easily by you.
You know what I'm so encouraged to encourage you with?
What?
There will come a time in your Christian maturity where doing all the right practices actually sometimes leads to more misery.
Yeah. Oh, I already know that.
Which it's called the dark night of the soul. Like even like this last month, I think I've actually been really.
That's in that book, right? The Glass House, the Dark Night of the Soul. Who wrote the Glass House?
I don't know about the Glass House.
Oh, it's not the house.
I know Mansions of the Heart.
Mansions of the Heart. That one.
Okay, yeah, that's my spiritual director.
It's in that book, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dark Night of the Soul.
Yeah.
But it's like it's hard, and I think God in His grace doesn't introduce that thing until you're really you've been doing it for a long time. Like they actually say most people don't experience that till like in their 60s, and if they've been doing it their whole life. But I feel like I'm experiencing a miniature version of it. Where this past month I look at like my habits and practices. I'm like, I've actually been killing it. Like I've actually been doing the things.
Right.
But man, I'm exhausted. I'm miserable. I'm waking up with anxiety, and it's like, but I'm doing the right things. And so sometimes even like I want to use it as an encouragement. Hey, your life will probably get immediately better. Like if you Sabbath, it might be right after that Sabbath, you're so rested.
Yeah.
But there might be days where you're not.
Yeah.
And that's when it's like, are you doing this? Are you serving God for your sake, or are you serving God for God's sake?
Yeah.
And going, okay, even though I'm still miserable doing this, I'm still not going to fall. I'm not going to go into temptation. I still know your way is the right way. It's the good way. It's the beautiful way. And even though I don't feel the payoff yet, I'm going to keep leaning in.
And that's where everybody turns.
Yeah.
That's the turning point for everybody, because it's so easy to just be like, no, I'm not going to do this today. No, I'm going to go do whatever. Right. And that's when you give in. That's when you give into the sin. That's when you give in desires, temptation, all those things, because it's hard.
And that's why you need community. It's like, hey, like that's actually what's been holding me up. I have friends, mentors, and I just been like, hey, here's my life. Here's what's going on. I'm tired. I'm this, I'm that. And they're like, hey, we've been there. You're doing right. Keep pushing through.
Yeah.
I got a text yesterday that said, do not grow weary in doing good.
Yeah.
For at the right time, this is in Galatians, you will reap a harvest.
Yeah.
Don't grow weary. Keep going. You need to hear that from somebody.
You do. You do. And like, I find it too, when you're engaging with other people of different walks, I think it helps me personally when I'm talking with people who don't have that relationship or have that life. I can talk to them about my previous life and how I was before and who I am today and why I am the way I am today.
Yeah.
And like, that's the biggest thing of where I'm at with my new company, right? Like I feel like I can talk about that freely and I'm not going to get in trouble.
Sure.
Where before, the place I worked at before, if I said anything along those lines, I'm going to go to HR or whatever, right? But people could talk about other things that are total worldly things that I don't agree with, but I have to be okay with. But they can't be okay with what I believe in.
Yeah.
And so whenever you get the opportunity to talk to those people about that, it helps bring me back. So like when someone's struggling with something and they talk to me about it, or somebody just has this way of life that they're living in, I can tell them, well, here's kind of what I think. Yeah. Here's kind of where I would go with things. But like my thought process is always Jesus' foundation, right? And like how I would go about things. And that's encouraging to help turn back into the right direction instead of turning away to the temptation and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one way to witness to people is to go, you know what? You don't have to, like, hey, you don't have to fully adopt. Like, I'm not saying you have to be a Jesus follower, but how about you try this thing that Jesus does?
Right.
And let's see how it changes your life.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's interesting when Jesus would call his disciples, his first thing was what? Follow me.
Follow me. Just,
hey, you don't have to sign off on a document yet. Just start doing what I do and see what happens to your life.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like, hey, how about you try this? Let's pivot. Let's do something the way of Jesus is. And wow, you're going to be like, okay, I want to know more about this rabbi and his way of life. Right. It's a good way to introduce people.
Well, and you see the things that change, right? So if you just start off with prayer, just praying every day. Yeah. And there are times that's hard. And I found that when it's hard for me to pray, like I'll start a prayer and then I'll just get distracted.
Yeah.
In that moment, this week I tried something new, is that when that happened, I'm like, you know what, God, I think I'm just going to sit here and meditate. I'm just going to try and listen to what you want to tell me and keep the distractions out of my head, because I'll go squirrel all the time and other things pop up. I'm like, keep those out, and I'm just going to sit in silence and listen. And I think if you can recognize and do those things, like that's what helps you grow, and that's what builds that endurance.
Yeah, that's making space for grace right there.
Yeah, 100%. And it was definitely encouraging. I don't think I got anything from it like in that moment, but like being able to recognize that I can do that in those moments, I think more is going to come, because it's not going to come in that moment. You're going to get different things at different times. You don't know when that's going to be.
Yeah. Give our Lord the benefit of believing that his hand is leading you.
Yeah. It's so good.
Or what's that other line I said?
Is this all in that prayer?
Yeah.
Dang. Your whole sermon's on the prayer, right?
Only God can say what this new spirit gradually forming within you will be.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So that's the other thing, man. We judge ourselves so fast. I tried this. Am I better now?
Right.
Okay, I'm not. That didn't change me. I'm out. We
want that instant gratification.
Yeah.
Because that's the world we live in, is that you get that instant gratification. I can pull my phone up right now and order food, and it'll be here in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Instead of going into the kitchen and making food that takes me 40 minutes. We want that instant gratification. And when we don't get it, we're like, okay, that didn't work.
So the three things, I have 3 reminders on my phone, one at 9 a.m., one at noon, and one at 3. The 9 a.m. one is just grace. So I start with it. Okay, thank you, God, for your grace. And just kind of like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then the next one is gratitude. So then I'm just thankful. Like,
right.
Thank you for my family. Thank you for this conversation. Thank you, whatever. But then the 3 p.m. one is delay gratification. Like, as men, we need that reminder.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, we live like kings, where there's a lot, if we want it, it can be at the, like you just said,
easily
the click of a phone, or whatever. And so, man, like learning, okay, I could have that right now, but I'm going to delay that.
Right.
And that's what really forms us. And that's what I like about the simplicity practice. It's called an abstinence practice, which really you're doing it right if you're doing less.
Right.
So some habits, it's like okay, I have to like get my Bible out and read.
Yeah.
But simplicity is like, okay, I'm not buying. I'm not watching. So you're saying no. What you're doing is delaying gratification.
Yeah. No, that's good.
What's hard is that we all live by the pleasure principle in secular society.
Yeah.
The meaning of life is all found here, not in the next one. We can't delay even to next week, let alone the next life.
Right.
A huge Christian ideal is, hey, I wasn't made for this world. I was made for the next one.
Yeah.
So like, I even found some of my depression or misery comes from that false thought that I have to be rewarded here. I'm doing this for my crown and the next one,
exactly.
But that pleasure principle just destroys us from the inside out, because we think, well, if I want it and I can access it, I have to grab it.
Right.
And that's like, no, that's actually the worst thing for you. That's why fasting is also another great thing to do.
And it goes back to that routine in your mind and what it trains your mind to do, right? Because then you do it over and over again, and that's where a lot of consistent sin stimulates from. That wasn't the right word. I don't know what word I needed to use there.
Stems from.
I don't know why I said stimulate. I said stimulates. That's whatever. That was stupid. But like, that's where a lot of sin stems from, because you go and get it, and then you got it, and you're like, cool, I'm done. And then your routine now kicks in and says you need to go get it again.
Desire gives birth to sin. Sin fully grows up and leads to death. James 1. James 1 just is a gift that keeps on giving.
Do you think Yoda knew James 1?
What? Why?
Anger leads to hate, like that whole Jedi thing.
Oh, I don't even know it. I'm such a bad Star Wars fan.
I'm gonna butcher this. Caleb's gonna kill me.
Okay.
It's like Yoda says, like, anger leads to hate leads to. I gotta look it up. I'm gonna say it wrong. Hold on.
Yeah. What is it? Does he say it in the originals?
Yeah.
What do you call it? No, not the prequels. They're just called originals.
The originals, yeah.
That's how much of a Star Wars fan I'm not.
I know. I can't believe I'm butchering this right now. I'm terrible at Star Wars.
You're the Star Wars guy.
No, Caleb's a Star Wars guy.
Caleb's the everything movie guy.
He is. Okay, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Okay, yeah. That's pretty profound.
Yeah, that's what Yoda said.
Yeah, he even said it in order. He didn't mess it up and say...
No, that's how he said it.
Say this weird I did.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He didn't say it. Yeah, that's how he says it in the movie.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's actually profound about fear being the basis.
Yeah.
Because perfect love casts out fear.
Right. And, the
opposite of love isn't hate. The opposite of love is fear.
Oh, really?
Because perfect love casts out fear. John contradicts. He says, no, you don't live a life of fear, live a life of love. If you think about it, why do we hate? Why do we tear down? We are fearful there's not enough for me. we're fearful what they're gonna, So fear
Yeah,
is a huge base.
Yeah, that is a huge base.
Why did Adam and Eve, sin? They feared, like, oh, I won't have enough. I need to have this to take care of myself.
I didn't know that.
Fear is pretty big.
That's good. Yeah, fear is pretty big. It's funny how Star Wars kind of tied into that and tied into those things, right? Like, there's those little nuggets in there. It's not all bad.
Yeah, no, I really, I don't know Star Wars enough, but they say it's like it's the perfect, and we'll close with this nerdum. Star Wars, the story is like the perfect, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
And then like Luke, goes through this thing and then he overcomes his obstacles and this is, and that's what made so many people upset in episode 8 when Luke all of a sudden was no longer the hero.
Right.
And he's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
But it really represents our time. Like we don't like look up to heroes like we used to.
That's true. We don't.
It's like this whole YouTube video. Again, this is me when I wasn't practicing digital simplicity, but it's this whole idea where you have like, remember Top Gun, like the Top Gun 2, wasn't it just great?
I love
People
that
were like,
movie.
they don't make them like they used to. Like this felt like a classic movie.
Oh, this movie's great.
It was a classic movie because America was actually like a good institution to trust. He was just a good person doing a good thing.
Yeah.
All the movies today are like, oh, everything's corrupt.
Right.
Like we actually like the anti-hero more than the hero. Like we like Joker, who's just a terrible person, but you find yourself rooting for him. Like why? Like if you think, no, this is terrible.
Yeah.
But essentially in our era, we're so skeptical and doubtful of good.
Yeah.
That we just elevate the anti-hero.
Yeah.
Which is why like a Top Gun thing was like so refreshing. Like, oh, we can still have heroes today. And like, why do we have to ruin everything? Oh, Luke Skywalker and this and that. And it just shows our need. Like we just don't have hope. We're like, there's no change. We're just going to celebrate how terrible everything is. We're going to try to find hope in that, which is called nihilism.
Yeah. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Talk about nerdy. Your phone keeps vibrating and I'm
I know it's
your work phone.
No, it's not even my work phone. I put that on complete silent. I hope I didn't. Nah, I didn't miss anything.
Just keep checking my phone, even though I know I have my Sabbath settings on it. So literally it won't beep me. And yet I keep checking.
It's because mine keeps going off. It's my stupid Ring notification. Because my street's a busy street all the time. That's why a lot of times I just ignore my notifications.
Nice.
But yeah. Well, I can still keep going if you want. I got time.
Is there anything else you want to bring up?
I don't know.
We can all do this. You can come on again.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay.
I just got to find the time.
We also, me and Caleb were talking about creating a Create Men podcast.
Oh, we should.
So just focusing on masculinity and what is a man and all those things. So,
well, and I mean, a lot of this ties into what men struggle with nowadays, right? Just like we talked about with getting that instant gratification of things, you know, that's a huge thing that men struggle with, you know.
And discipline, like these practices, like, another way to say it is discipline. And
discipline,
do we need it? Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jubal.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We appreciate you. I feel like this was a really fun, good conversation.
I think so too.
And we hope to have you back.
Yeah, definitely. It was a good time.
Yeah. Grace and peace, y'all. Make sure you guys comment. What was your favorite part?
Yeah. What's your favorite part? Who has the better beard? That's the question.
Oh, you're winning. So I don't even, dude. Yeah. But they're both ginger.